Making SWC would mean a lot to me. It's what I strive to do. It's what I'm playing for. It's my motivation.
It would mean a lot to me. It will be really nice since we're like kind of the underdogs. So it will be a upset in the history of Smite for us to win this.
Winning SWC this year would be such an incredible achievement to me.
Making SWC would mean the world to me. I think still super competitive and playing is still my passion, so I would love to be able to make and hopefully win SWC this year.
For me personally, it's a huge achievement to just come in again, be really dominant in the season before and just take the entire thing. I think it's something that's never been done in the Smite scene before, having a back-to-back win. And yeah, it would be cool to go for it.
My team's gonna make SWC because we have a lot of synergy. Our team fights are like better late game. Yeah, we're better than the others.
We're gonna show everyone at LAN because we put in a lot of practice and we synergize very well over the year.
Smite in the gaming isn't really about the money. It's definitely not about the money. It's about winning.
Since I joined this team, I got this team from zero to a hero, basically.
Guess we got the king. That's why.
We've been working really hard this year to stay at the top level.
Mechanically wise, we're all insane players. All the guys are unbelievable.
Because I have the most skillful players in my team.
This year is my year.
This year is my year, again.
This year is my year.
This year is my year. This year is my year.
And as you can see with our players as well, all these players competing to try and get themselves out of this group. Group C, day 2 continues. Joining me today is going to be Hazer, the coach of Cyclone, as well as Aggro once more to bring you all the action from this first set today. But as we said, these players trying to get to the World Championships overall, and you guys at home can as well. You can head over to smitegame.com and get your tickets right about now. Actually, hi-rez.expo.com. I'm a bit of an idiot there. Forgot which one it was. But you can also get your tickets at a 25% discount if you use the code Group-C. So 25% off, and it means you're 25% closer to meeting Aggro at Worlds.
Oh man, and you're gonna get a full 100% awesome hug if you use code Group-C.
Awesome hug. Awesome hug. That was really awkward. Hazer, big day for your boys yesterday. Obviously, you had some very difficult matchups. Coming into today, we're going to start things off with Obey up against NRG, the world champions now. And this is a good opportunity, I guess, for your boys to really look at these two teams to work out what you need to do going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We thought, you know, not having to play any teams before they played yesterday was an advantage for us, but, you know, we just had a bit of a prank day. We were just kidding around. We're ready now to come in. I know I said we were going to go 12-0, but I meant 8-4. We're going to go 8-4.
8-4. Okay, it's more realistic, right, Aggro? I mean,
yeah, I mean,
you're a clean sweep.
First day at LAN, we're just having a laugh, you know, joking around.
Yeah. Much more realistic to expect 8-4 here, but overall, I mean, I think all teams yesterday showed a sign of greatness, at least at points. I mean, we saw Ice for you guys have a great set late in the day, and then, you know, Obey was making tons of plays, PrettyPriMe with an unbelievable 3-man Vulcan ult off the Frezzy knock-up. I mean, tons of awesome plays from every team. Really excited for day 2.
Well, going into day 2 here, the first two things to really talk about is probably the junglers from the two teams that are about to meet right now. It's Adapting, and it is CaptainTwig. These two boys, well, Adapting's been around a little less time than Twig, but they've both very experienced. Hazer, what's your opinion on these two junglers?
I think they're both incredible mechanically. You see Twig playing duel, you know, destroying everybody in the world. He won, you know, that pro player duel tournament we had a little while ago, and Adapting, you know, world renowned as maybe the best player in the world. I really think Twig has stepped up his game once moving out mid into the jungle, and now he's absolutely doing work.
And with Twig's transition as well, Aggro, it's been a long one for him. Obviously, he used to be a jungler, then it was a mid laner, then a jungler, and now he's still a jungler after making these transitions. But he's started to find a home here on Obey.
Not the same sort of style, these two junglers, and it's a very interesting sort of difference between the two. You see Twig really willing to set up his team and be the sacrificial lamb most of the time. You'll see him have a lot of deaths, but his mid laner or his hunter have a lot of kills. Whereas Adapting's more of the, I want to carry the game, I want to be the star, and it works for both of these teams. There's nothing wrong with either of those play styles. So it'll be interesting to see which one works better along with their team, because we can talk all day about individual players here, but Smite is still a team game, and specifically with these two players, how they synergize with their team is going to be very important.
And that's one thing Adapting does very well with Yammyn in the mid lane. Those two are just a dynamic duo, Haze. It's very difficult to really pin down how to play against them.
Yeah, I think they're just, they have a lot of variety in their play. They can do anything. They can go for any mid-jungle combo, and I think they're going to play well off it. And also with iRaffer coming into that trio with them, they just play off each other so well. They probably don't even have to speak. They read each other so well when they're playing.
Well, CaptainTwig saying up there, we will actually, let's have a little listen in to what the players had to say about that man on your screen right now, adapting. Well, we will in a minute. Sorry about the technical issues there. But yeah, adapting for the most part here, you know, been around the scene for a while. A lot of people rate him as the top player, but coming into this LAN, a few people started talking up Cuvo Fred a little bit more aggro, and adapting doesn't seem too pleased about that.
He did not like that one bit. Has very much been open about his displeasure for any sort of doubts about his place in the world stage, where he belongs and where his team belongs as well. It's both him as an individual and his team that's very important to make sure that they want to stay on top. You heard Dimi say this year is my year again. They're really important. They're putting a lot of emphasis on staying on top because they don't like this talk of they're slipping down. They want to prove that they aren't.
Very passionate player, Hazer. He's adapting here. I mean, obviously, overall, passionate. He shows it on stream as well. When he loses, he loves to win, but playing to win can be a really big benefit sometimes.
Yeah, I think his competitive drive is something which helped him stay right at the top of the game throughout the last 2 years. He is just... he hates losing. You can see every time he loses, that look on his face. I mean, some of the other guys on NRG, they don't get so upset. I think they keep him calm. But I think between himself and iRaffer, I think they really, really, really dislike losing.
As we go into picks and bans here, with adapts on your screen, you can see Youngbei hovering in the background. If you don't know who Youngbei is, you should do your research. That guy's been around a long time. Used to be a very good AD carry until he decided to become the coach of the Boys of Energy. Well, picks and bans coming through. Rajing Wei, Isis Ao Kwang, and the first pick is going to be Terra for NRG.
Kind of surprised that Obey was willing to give up Terra. I mean, we've seen her basically be permabanned so far this weekend, but instead trying to take away from two gods that NRG has shown very much success with. That's Ao Kwang for adapting in the jungle, and then Yammyn on that Isis just looked so strong both during the online phases and yesterday, pushing the tempo in that mid lane.
With the Obey picks coming through here, Fafnir and Batz as well. How are we feeling about this so far, Hazer?
It's kind of funny. This is the first time Terra's made it through the picks and bans so far this tournament, and you see both teams going for target bans this time. You see the Jingwei taken away from Ataraxia, the Ra taken away from Prime, the Isis taken away from Yammyn, as Agro said, and the AO taken away from Adapting. And we'll see how these guys can farm on gods, which they're maybe not so good on. Fafnir and Humbat's definitely a comfort pick for CaptainTwig, and we've seen Frezzy really go off so far in Fafnir this tournament.
Well, here's the Freya for emilitoo as well, something he's gone to multiple times so far. And with the Terra in the lane as well, plenty of options for them in the dual lane, but magical heavy already in the first two picks.
I'm sure they're not too worried about it. They'll be able to round it out with a physical jungler most likely, as well as a physical solo laner. Kind of surprised that we didn't see Obey go Fafnir Freya. We know the sort of potency that those two have in the duo lane, and talking to Ataraxia, he seems to really think that Freya's in a really strong spot right now. We've seen Freya get banned away, things along those natures, so kind of surprised that we didn't see them go for that, but instead, like Hazer mentioned, comfort pick here for CaptainTwig. But we did see Adapting play Batz yesterday, and that's when they lost to Cringe Crew. Batz has been picked a lot thus far, but has not seen the success that I think a lot of teams would have expected.
Well, he has got 4 wins at the moment for the Boys of Obey, so it's working out okay for them there. NRG really thinking about this next pick coming through at this stage. Do you want to see a jungler picked up here, Hazer? Because most of the time we see a lot of these teams focus on good old adapts in the jungle, and it doesn't really work.
I think NRG don't need to do that. Maybe if there's something they think is particularly strong here, they'll go for it. But I think with the depth of Adapting's God Pool, they can wait a little longer. Maybe go for a Hunter here. Maybe go even from an early solo, even for an early solo laner here. Sorry, they really have that fluidity in picks because of their depth.
You could also look to pick one of the physical hunters for Yammyn in the mid lane. We could see him pull out a Chiron here, kind of offsetting the magical hunter that they have in Freya already. Or we saw Adapting play a Willish yesterday up against Batz. It is a positive matchup. You're able to pull Batz back in off the somersault. But with the combination with Terra, you can't get stuck there standing in the root for 1.5 seconds, but you also can't jump away because then you get Gravity Surge. It's a potent combo that's tough to deal with.
And with this as well, as I'm looking through the draft already, I mean, I don't expect to see fireworks of crazy picks and shenanigans in game 1. I think both teams will probably want to stay standard here, Hazer, for the most part, and just adapt based off that first game.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen either of them pull out a really crazy pick yet. They've been playing kind of the standard game with the picks you'd expect to see this tournament so far, and we see the Agni come out for Yammyn here, so that's another magical damage dealer, a bit more CC to go along with that Terra. So we'll see how they can pull off that.
It is, and the rise of Agni, Agro, started to come back this split. Chaos, one of the first ones to really pick it up and try and make it a thing, and more teams recognize that it actually is viable.
Now that Raijin doesn't have the dominance in the mid lane that he had for most of the online stages, gods like Agni that don't have the strongest early game, that need a little bit of time to get going, are feeling a lot better. You're not getting punished quite as hard, especially with Isis banned away. It means that PrettyPriMe wouldn't be able to pick up that another high pressure mid laner like an Isis. You know, you're expecting PrettyPriMe to go with something like a Vulcan, you know, that he's known for. Vulcan not super awesome in the early game, so he's got a little bit of time to kind of get that farm going on Agni that you need.
Well, we see the Chiron picked up for Obey there. More than likely, that's going over to Ataraxia here, Hazer. So this option here, it looks like he waited. We'll see what the boys of Energy were going to pick in dual lane before picking his Hunter.
Yeah, he did play Chiron twice throughout the online stage, so something that he is familiar with. It'll be interesting to see how well he can use that cleanse here to cleanse the roots from Terra, cleanse the stuns from Terra, and cleanse the stuns from Agni. So I think that's definitely a pick they're looking to cleanse CC with rather than do a lot of damage.
It is something that we don't talk too much about, the cleanse on Chiron's ability, but at the same time, it does take a little bit while, and you've got to kind of pre-fire it to make sure it works at the right time. How difficult is that in the game?
Yeah. For me, I never quite got the hang of it. I think if there's anyone who can do it, it will be Ataraxia. He seems to be the hunter who's most comfortable on Chiron. He's been practicing it a lot. And I think we could see a really impressive performance from here, Well,
a couple of focus bans here going the way of Energy. Again, they focused a little bit onto our boy Dimi in the solo lane with the Langshan ban. And then once again, you don't want Adapting to get his Fafnir.
No, you don't, because we've seen Fafnir's actually had a very good tournament thus far. I mean, we saw Ice for Cyclone yesterday have a great performance on it. Didn't end up with a W, but did his best on that character and has been able to put the pressure that you need in the early game. And this yesterday was very, very pressure heavy. Smite these days is always pressure heavy, but we saw Energy just completely dismantle Cringe Crew exclusively through pressure. And so picking these early gods, and you see the bans for it as well. Isis, Erlong, Fenrir, all strongest in the early to mid game, and all three banned away by Obey.
And when you talk about pressure here as well, I mean, we said Agni's not the greatest at the beginning of the game, Hazer. What kind of jungle are you expecting to come out from Energy here?
Well, I think it depends, because Agni... we see a Nem come out, so that is not a pressure-heavy mid-jungle duo. And I think this is the first time we've seen Dimi on that tier this tournament so far, so we'll see what Obey have here to counter that in the solo lane.
And that tier for me just feels like they wanted to make sure they hit at variety at the same time. They did already ban away Yammyn and a potential of an Odin if he so chose to go that route as well. So obviously we may end up seeing a Guardian out of variety here.
We could. We saw him on Sobek yesterday. Wouldn't be surprised to see that here whatsoever.
Really.
The fabled Zhonghui, never up against Nemesis,
not Nemesis though. That's
never
for sure.
into Nemesis.
I think that's one of the reasons I think we saw the Nemesis as well here. Now the Guan Yu comes out as the final pick here for the solo lane, more than likely for variety. Composition wise, I mean, take a look down the rosters. It does look like Obey a little bit stronger in the early game here, Hazer.
Yeah, I actually like this Obey draft a lot. The Guan is very strong into the tier. You know, that Talos Assault being knockback immune means he can clear the wave safely. But it's not something we've seen variety on before. I think he's only played Bellona, Ymir, Odin, Tyr, and Sobek so far. So quite a narrow god pool, and maybe that's what Energy we're trying to have a shot at there. But overall, I'll be excited to see how Energy can play with this Terra, if they can show why she's been banned in every game so far.
Aggro, this strategy that's come out from Energy here, obviously we see them play a lot of early game stuff for the most part, but knowing that Obey are very good at getting behind and coming back into it in the mid to late game, it looks like they have gone for a much later composition here.
Yeah, this is going to take a little bit for them to get going. I expect that they won't try to pick any fights until at least the 12 to 15 minute mark. That's when they're going to start to get some items online. Once Freya hits 3 items, that's her biggest power spike. She'll be able to come in and start making an impact in these fights. So this is a good draft from Energy because it's got a lot of single target damage from Freya and Nemesis, but also some good AoE from Terra and Agni. They can spread it out, or they can condense it and really explode one target that jumps out of position, something like a CaptainTwig. So let's see how well CaptainTwig and Frezzy can peel for PrettyPriMe and Ataraxia and sacrifice themselves for the good of those two carries.
Well, we mentioned CaptainTwig, and now he's in your screen playing the Hombatz this game as well. Now we talked that he's going to have lane pressure in the mid lane with that Raijin up against the Nemesis and Agni. And when you look at the Energy duo lane here, obviously Freya, Terra, they're going to have pretty good wave clear there over in that duo lane. We could see CaptainTwig maybe look to force some things in the duo lane if they do overextend.
I think the Batz is a good pick against the Freya. I mean, you can burst her down in that Fear No Evil before she can get up in the air. But we haven't really seen Obey focus that duo lane too hard so far, I don't think. I think they really focus on that core.
On the solo lane, thinking about it even more.
Yeah, they go over to Variety's lane a lot. I think they punished Deathwalker a few times in Cyclone's game against Obey. So we'll have to see if that continues or if Twig recognizes the fact that the duo lane will be a good place to pick behind, get that Freya away from the farm that she needs to reach the late game, and propel his team into a victory.
And how much do you actually really have to focus on that as a jungler, recognizing where your lanes are going to be strongest to gank or weakest to defend? You know, how difficult is it for a jungler to minimize and maximize all those possibilities?
I promise you that Twig is talking about that with his team right now, where he wants to be on the map, where he wants to force the issue, if you will, around the map, just doing whatever he can, because sometimes you want to move to the right side and to secure those right side buffs if you're losing pressure in the solo lane, but sometimes you almost want to let the other jungler come to your right side, say, yeah, oh, we're not here on time, then we're going to gank the duo lane, then we're going to take the Gold Fury, something along those lines. It's always a game of chess in Smite, and I'm sure that he and his team are talking about it right now.
A lot of mind games, Hazer. That's the main thing here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that we've not really touched on is Gold Fury contention between these two teams. I mean, NRG, they might be looking to pick up a hog here, I think. But I mean, Nem's Gold Fury contention, not great. Agni's is okay, still not amazing. Freya's really not that good. And when you've got the Batz and the Raijin on the other side, along with that Fafnir, it's going to be really hard for them to contest Gold Furies here.
We talk about the Wrath though, Hazer. Where would you see the Wrath going to? Would it be the Terra more than anything here?
I would say iRaffer would be picking up that Wrath on the Terra. I don't think you really want Wrath on tier. I don't think NRG like playing without teleport. I think we're going to see a teleport on Dimi once more.
If we're going to see that as well, Aggro, are we going to see Obey pick up a Wrath as well here?
We haven't seen Variety do it yet. He's also a fan of the teleport. Divio seems to be dictating the NA meta alone without kind of seeping over to the European scene.
Deathwalker did pick up Frenzy yesterday.
Yeah, can we talk? What was that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. That's all we need to know.
You know, you can't micromanage Deathwalker. He builds whatever he wants, man.
Yeah, apparently he's building Frenzy first. But another point, that was a great point about the objective contention. The tower contention for NRG here, they have to win team fights heavily if they want to push towers. They don't have any sort of augmentation to kill their towers unless they build Frenzy first item or something like that.
Well, the game's ready, so I need quick final thoughts from you. Hazer, who do you think is going to win this one based off comps?
I'm going to go with Obey on this one. I think their comp's a bit stronger. We'll see if they can perform here, but I like their comp better.
Aggro?
I don't like seeing adapting on Nemesis. I'm going NRG.
F.Tolly, take us away with game one of NRG versus Obey.
Good afternoon and welcome to the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. Obey Alliance. You know, I have to go with some of the analysts over there, Tolly. I'm loving their composition. If NRG was any other team, I'd probably be sitting here blasting the lack of objective control and a lot of other things that this composition seems to be lacking. But like many people have said, it's hard to bet against the defending world champs.
I love what NRG did with their draft to start things off. They drafted emilitoo's God, iRaffer, and Yammyn, trying to set up the core late game damage with some great crowd control, saving their jungle and solo pick, having adapting play Nemesis. Honestly, he could play any god that he wants to, so he just fits that role to try to synergize with Yammyn so well by having such a good assassin god that can easily dive the backline.
I'm a big fan of Nemesis, still and always will be. She just allows so much. She enables characters like the Agni who don't bring a lot of burst potential or necessarily the top shelf burst potential and turn them into those characters. So you're able to pick Agni and have that long range stun and that utility, if you will, out of the mid lane, but at the same time adapting can enable him to become one of the more heavy carries on the side of the squad. But here is the player that I really want to talk about, Toli, is Dimi over here in the solo lane on this tier. One, of course, every solo laner, with the exception of Deathwalker at our Group C, really enjoys this tier. So Dimi picking it up, taking it away from Variety, I think is a strong play, but more importantly, it's Dimi on the tier, I think.
During Season 2, he's been really favoring the tier. He liked this matchup against the Bellona and the Xingqian. He would make some really great rotational plays, and that was what he was really known for, because a lot of tiers would sit back and farm, whereas Dimi, he just loved to make that play around the mid lane. And what's Adapting has been doing recently is started to camp this lane in the solo. So if we see that kind of early pressure coming out of Adapting, then I expect Dimi to really go off.
It's an important pick out of Variety here, as emilitoo gets pressured just a little bit in the duo lane to go with the Guan Yu. Guan Yu will have a good matchup against the tier. because of the Tallow Assault.
A lot of action though in the duel lane. The Wrath was already used by PANDALIKE trying to get the kill on emilitoo. We saw the charge coming out of Ataraxia, putting him out of position, and this is what you want to do against a Freya in the early game. Try to exploit her before the Fatalis really comes online.
Right now though, emilitoo, it's really nothing to be too concerned about. As a Freya player, you're expecting to sort of be behind at this point, even without any more potions, as the poke has been pretty heavy-handed from the guys on Obey. You're expecting to be this hard poked, but Ataraxia on this Chiron, this is a god that I've spoken to a lot of players, and they don't particularly like him.
No, and this is a different style that Ataraxia has just started off. Going for the Bluestone Pennant instead of the normal, typical Transcendence Rush forces more aggression now, and that's why they're trying to really pick off emilitoo. They want this dual lane matchup going in the favor of Obey. They cannot allow emilitoo to get that mid-game stride.
And so Ataraxia going the Bluestone, I don't think we're going to see the Transcendence a little bit later. I think we'll just see boots into, well, it's never a normal build coming out of Ataraxia, so we'll certainly keep an eye on the Hunter.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to still go into Transcendence after boots. You have that built-in sustain in your kit with the Chiron, and trying to get the MP5 to match that would be a really great idea, especially when you're constantly sitting in lane in 1v1 trying to out-trade Freya.
Well, Obey has gotten the best of the jungle so far, sitting up about 400 gold, which is nothing to really hang your hat on, but more importantly, the mid lane and some of the players surrounding on Obey have hit level 5 before their opposition, so look for some power spike moves.
With the buff spawning in about 40 seconds or so, teams are just starting to group up because the Fire Giant minions are going to go in the favor of Obey. And this is where we're going to start seeing some action maybe, because now we see NRG back trying to get that power spike items. We see Warrior Tabby being finished for both junglers, but it's going to be Obey that clears out the midway first. So if they really want to, they can position themselves for that speed buff invade.
Exactly, and knowing Obey, that's going to be what they're looking for. Right now, though, CaptainTwig looking for first blood onto Dimi, biding his time, coming in, not going to take the teleport, just saying hello.
And with PANDALIKE here, having the Wrath, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to shut down the speed buff from adapting. On the flip side, we don't see iRaffer here quite yet.
Not quite yet. 3 players for Obey. There's the ultimate out of the Hun Batz. CaptainTwig's forced to jump over the wall. Players from NRG going to keep up the chase. Here comes emilitoo all the way from the left lane. Big damage into CaptainTwig, but it's just not enough. Different story for PANDALIKE. Yammyn puts him down.
Just sacrificing himself for that speed buff. They did strip it away from adapting, but on the flip side, now NRG are going to have that opportunity to return the favor. But that rotation from emilitoo, it definitely hurt him out a lot, because look at all the farm that Ataraxia has been able to get. He's level 6 now, to 150 gold ahead of his opposition.
So individually that hurts emilitoo, but it's a very important play for NRG. Obey had gotten the better of the jungle, picking up a lot of those elementals and the mid harpies, and had stretched themselves to almost 700 gold in the lead raw, which is something that's very difficult to really deal with as you come back, because it's not off of a tower, it's just off of jungle superiority. Here, NRG claims 500 gold for picking up that first blood, and bang, just like that, they're back in it.
You give NRG an inch, they're going to take a mile. Off of that one kill, they stripped away the speed and the blue, and now a Guan Yu without blue buff in the laning phase, especially against a tier that can just already sustain in the early game harder than the Guan Yu, since you're maxing out your power cleave, whereas Guan Yu's maxing out the Tallow Assault. So now Dimi, despite him being a level behind because of all the shared experience, he's still in a good spot once he gets his own blue buff again.
Friday was in a little bit of a scary situation, but able to sneak his way out of there. No problem for him, despite being surrounded by NRG combatants.
Look at all those wards around the Fire Giant pit coming out of the solo lane. Really great positioning from NRG, trying to spot out CaptainTwig. It seems that they recognize that that's the goal and strategy from Obey. Not really focusing on emilitoo as much as they were thought, or that at least that I thought that was going to happen, you know, trying to shut down the Freya, but instead preventing Twig from making anything happen in the solo lane.
Well, we see too many players and too many teams fall victim to this sort of repeated invade strategy. I mean, just yesterday, yesterday we saw a number of teams lose their buffs 3, 4, 5 times in a row, all the way up to the 15-minute mark. This time around, NRG go, okay, you invaded us once, or at least tried to. We're going to prevent that a second time. Here comes Dimi, though, in trouble. Flip is good, but the follow-up damage out of CaptainTwig. Quick play out of the teleport, and it's 1-1.
I'm surprised he didn't use that defensive power clip for the heal, but Ataraxia is in trouble. He gets rooted out. The ultimate from emilitoo secures the kill. 1-for-1 trade, trading solo for the Hunter. And now that's really good for emilitoo as the Freya Fatalis does finish up. This is where emilitoo is going to start playing aggressive, and that's, you know, that he wants to start taking these trades.
I mean, absolutely. The Fatalis is step one, right? Fatalis, now you're able to sort of chase down your opponent. Once you buy the boots, you're a little bit more powerful, but it's still nothing to really get excited about. But then that third item, whether it's demo grip or otherwise, that's where you see Freya's really shifted into gear. So right now, emilitoo, he's just pulling out the driveway. If you present yourself to him, he will take a couple of swings at you, but it's going to be a little while until he really starts slamming it home.
And we saw what NRG did after the kill onto Ataraxia. They went into the jungle side just to reset the boar timer and the red buff timer. So if they make another play in the duo lane, they're definitely going to look for more invades. They found it in the solo lane, but the question is, can they make something happen in the duo? But a nice little teleport picking up the speed, but very cheeky CaptainTwiggy.
Yeah, CaptainTwig right there. Big boy play. NRG do ward. We discussed how they were going to sort of protect their speed buff, but they had all the information, but they were unable to really capture CaptainTwig, despite having the numbers advantage.
Just perfect execution from Twig, even having the confidence to go back in there just to pick it up. Normally, when you invade a buff with using an ability, sometimes you don't always want to commit to picking it up. You put yourself in an overextended position, but the fact that Yammyn already used a bomb stun, he didn't really have to worry about that big CC. He also has his Fear No Evil to get him out of danger.
Right side Harpies, NRG going to make a play for them, but Obeys here with 4 players. Yammyn wrapping around the top side. There's the ultimate out of the jungler. Power damage out of PrettyPriMe, and he's answered back by Yammyn. Here's the trouble from Variety, looking for the stun. Gonna miss. Nice dash out of Yammyn to escape the trouble from the solo laner. And the rest of Obey will disengage, and not too big of a deal, except for Ataraxia, who makes the rotation out of the long lane, and emilitoo follows in suit and gets the 3rd kill for NRG.
Unfortunately, Obey doesn't have the sustain quite yet. The Guan Yu's only level 10, taking a lot of AoE damage from Yammyn there, and NRG immediately going to the goal here. They still have the Wrath onto iRaffer. Like we mentioned before, you can't give any sort of wiggle room for NRG. They're going to punish you so hard.
PANDALIKE has a Wrath as well, so as soon as he shows his face around the corner, NRG are forced to really leash it, but Obey are going to get tricky and pull the gold trigger themselves. But again, Terra shows up and it's leashed. Battle of the Wraths.
You definitely don't want to start a Gold Fury against an Agni that has all 3 bombs available, even if it is only level 10. Yammyn picking up his own red buff this time, but Twig teleporting in just for that extra in-hand. And I like that play because that in-hand could potentially crit, and if you poke out the Agni and you force him back to base, and now you have a 5-on-4 maybe around the Gold Fury. Obey, though, still looking for more plays. iRaffer might be caught in the middle of a bag.
Yeah, nice slow on top of the support. He's going to walk into his own little trap, and a beautiful banish out of emilitoo. Is it enough? Crit onto the Hunter, but it's going to force CaptainTwig to turn around as the minions spawn out of the wave.
I like the idea, but Variety's in a lot of trouble in the solo lane. His ultimate just came up. He's still holding on to it, however, as well as Dimi. The mind games is so real because if Variety uses his ultimate, he's going to get chased down.
Dimi just being a big bully, as to be expected. Dimi has been a dominant force here in the solo lane for the entirety of his career, pretty much, on this team. And even once upon a time down to the challenger scene when he was playing through different teams, was still known as one of the more dominant players until finally he found a spot on this squad. And they were able to make it for the past 18 months or so. Dimi's been very successful, and Variety just recently, I'd say, well, recently is probably being a bit unfair. The entire year, I'd say. 2016 has been Variety's year, and he's been able to come back with a vengeance. So at one point, I think this matchup was hilariously one-sided, and now it is very seriously a battle of the wits.
This player comparison, we see just how effective they are to their team, but they do it in different styles, I would say. Variety likes to mix and match. He'll pull up the Ymir every now and then. He likes to mix in the Guardians, whereas Dimi, he won't always play the Guardians unless it's a Xing Chen that he really prefers, and that's the kind of style that we see. The theme coming out of NRG is just wait for Dimi to come online, look for these rotations, whereas Variety just likes utility play.
Mid lane, CaptainTwig drops his ult for the 50th time this game. That might be an approximation, but this time around, it's not so successful. Kill goes the other way. Credit to Yammyn.
Just really far out there. He was right over the sentry ward coming out of energy that's in the middle lane, and I like the positioning of it, not allowing a regular ward, so you can't really get spotted out if you're going to go on the left or the right side jungle. And now off of that one kill, immediately energy, they're grouping up, they got the boards, and now they're going to look for more play. If they find the pick here, they're going to go for this red.
Beautiful ultimate out of PandaLike, saves him for the moment. And honestly, with the way that the team is comprised, that moment will force energy to walk away. Dimi's able to get the invade single-handedly on the enemy blue buff. And again, talking about how dire the situation is for a Guan Yu without blue buff.
It's just so problematic, especially when you don't have MP5. Normally, we'll only see Genji's guard coming out of Guan Yu against a magical solo laner, so not probably going to see it this game, but Variety still getting bullied out. This is exactly what you really want to do as a tier, and this is the experience that Dimi really brings in these matchups, especially once he gets ahead. He was actually down a level, I think 8 versus 7, but now at 13, whereas Variety's still at 12.
And it's not even like this is a winning matchup, Anatoly. Like I said, the entire time that you're seeing Tallow, you're not going to be able to get the Fearless off, so Dimi really has to pick and choose the moments where he makes his advances.
We're going to wait for the fails, but a nice dash juke from Variety. He's going to be able to still stay alive, but teleport is still available for Variety. This is what Dimi wants to do. Keep bullying out Variety, force the teleport back into the laning phase, and then have the rest of energy really force something going on the Gold Fury. 5-on-4 play once Dimi teleports over.
Taking a look at the itemization as well, you can see the blink coming out of the solo lane tier. That's going to mean he's going to be very aggressive. Sometimes you'll see the shell, and Dimi will just look for the flank during the various team fights, but here, Dimi's going to look to play more of the offensive style peeler. Peeler is probably the wrong word. Let's just focus on the displacement. He's going to look to focus somebody that's in a bad spot, blink on top of them, and then surprise murder them.
Somebody has to force the purification. Dimi could easily do it. Yammyn can then follow up with some stuns, as well as iRaffer finding the wall collapse. So I like the style that Energy are going for this aggressive tier blink. Already grouping up in the mid lane. We haven't really seen a lot of 3-on-3 action in the mid lane between these two teams. Most of it is centered around these buff invades. Both of them getting some invades of their own. CaptainTwig stealing some speeds from Adapting, but look at the level disparity between Adapting and Twig. Just now hitting 14 compared to Twig that's still at 11. Doesn't have a second relic yet.
And it's interesting because we've seen Twig just be so incredibly active, and that's actually hurt him rather than help him. CaptainTwig, as I noted, has used his ult so many times there in the mid lane, the right lane, the left lane, finding a gank, finding another kill. He's 1-1-0, so it's not even that he's been that successful. He keeps trying to make these plays, but unfortunately, in an effort to be aggressive, he's not getting the farm that Nemesis is from being so passive.
But despite being behind, a Batz that's behind can still make a lot of plays. Now, Dimi playing aggressive, trying to invade, forcing the Fear No Evil just to secure the own speed buff, and I guarantee you Energy are going to make a play off of that one cooldown.
Absolutely. I mean, Fear No Evil is a big tool, and this is exactly what I was going to predict. Fear No Evil is one of the bigger tools that Obey has to really disrupt a big objection push. Here comes PandaLike, going to change into the Dragon, and that'll provide a little bit of space. Obey looking to bite back. 2
ultimates being traded there just for Adapting's ultimate, and that's a shorter cooldown than those two. So now, because they forced PandaLike's ultimate, it seems that Obey really wants to do this with the AoE Coerce.
Gold Fury picked up, leashed, and then picked up one more time. Leashed again. Blink, Fearless, Power Cleave, and Variety is toasted. Yammyn puts the flames on him. Here's the follow-up out of Energy. PandaLike in trouble. Surrounded by Energy jerseys. There's the dash on through, and emilitoo picks him up on the right-hand side. Ataraxia looking for the base, but he can't find it. Sanctuary saves the life of the Hunter for the moment, but it's a momentary lapse in judgment for Obey. They get a little bit aggressive, and they lose their tier 1 tower because of it.
And now Twig just coming in the backside. Energy, they so advantageous about taking advantage of any one cooldown. Without Twig's ultimate, Obey couldn't really even group up. We saw that PandaLike got caught out of position. He had to use his ultimate defensively. And then we saw PrettyPriMe using his ultimate, I think trying to peel more than anything else. He thought that maybe Adapting was going to go all in there, but it was just all a bait.
I mean, here's the thing, Toli, is that there are certain abilities that should sound an alarm. The oldest example is the Agni dash. You see an Agni dash in mid lane, and you call your jungler up. Wherever he is, you call him up and say, hey, let's camp this Agni. He just dashed. You're good for a couple of seconds, and just try to make the play. Fear No Evil on a composition like Obey's is one of those tools. Look, Variety's not going to be able to have this huge impact like he can on a Ymir, like we see sometimes. You don't have the Isis ultimate out of PrettyPriMe or a Vulcan presence. So when it comes down to objectives, Fear No Evil is going to be your #1 tool. If it gets burned in a bad spot, like we saw Dimi force it out, well, doors open, kick it through, and make your play.
Absolutely. There's all a timing window at that 15-minute mark. You don't really want to burn that Fear No Evil around the speed buff. It's important in the earlier stages of the game, but not so much when Goldfear can easily be done, especially with both supports having that Raph.
Obey now putting themselves in a position like they want to make a play for the Gold Fury, looking for the territory over here in the jungle. Everybody has a good position. Well, there's the back from Chiron. Thought we were going to see the jump in from the monkey, but CaptainTwig unlikely to engage by himself.
We don't really see any wing blades coming out of Obey to really deal with this Nemesis ulti quite yet. It seems that they're more focused about the damage. We see a lot of penetration coming out of Ataraxia between that Brawler's Beatstick, that Titan's Bane, even Brawler's Beatstick for Twig after the Hydra's Lament.
I mean, like I said, this character is an ability-based character, so Ataraxia is certainly going to build for the big bang for his buck. 40 and 20 for the power and penetration on the Brawlers, respectively. And then on the Titan's Bane, obviously the percent pen, a big deal. Ataraxia looking to really make it hurt with that masterful shot.
And now Dimi's making the rotation, gonna try to go for another speed buff invade, and Twig's jump is down, trying to secure it. This would be a good time for NRG to start things up.
Variety from the backside, but here's the help out of NRG. Again, CaptainTwig's ultimate going to be forced defensively. This time around, speed buff does go the way of CaptainTwig. There's the ultimate for PrettyPriMe, and they're going to follow up iRaffer. Gets out of there, and NRG try to help the invade, but it just doesn't come up their way.
The movement speed from iRaffer's ultimate just denying now Variety's caught away from his team. He's going to be probably the first victim, but Twiggy getting so low, Variety getting taken out by adapting.
Ataraxia is on the death door. emilitoo gets one. Ataraxia is in trouble. He's going to fall as well. Adapting gets the double kill. It's 9 in total for NRG.
And they only have one death. NRG are just on point right now, 9-1. Off of those 3 kills, instantly going to the goal. Fury's taking a red buff while they're at it, just getting even more rewarded. Heading into the 18-minute mark, they have a 4,000 goal lead. It's about to go to 6,000 after this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic push out of NRG and pretty much what they and their fans kind of expected. There's the 5,400 gold lead for the defending world champs, and you know they're coming into it. Obey is a very strong team, and like me and the analyst said, the composition is actually it's almost in Obey's favor. But I do take issue with the Chiron. I'm not sure how big of an impact the Chiron can make out of the dual lane.
No, not quite yet. We haven't seen much coming out of Ataraxia. We saw at level 2 and 3 they tried to find the kill onto emilitoo, but ever since then, CaptainTwig never really showed any presence in that dual lane, which is so important. Like we mentioned, you can't let Freya get at this stage of the game. Instead, looking for the speed buff invades, which is a nice strategy because adapting, he really wants his speed buff. So if you do strip it away, there is a little bit of a mental factor where you could potentially tilt him out of the game.
Sure, but let's stick to the stuff that's actually on the scoreboard. Believe it or not, I'm going to be the one shifting away from intangibles here, Toli, is the fact that you brought up that Batz from behind can actually do rather well because he's all about Fear No Evil. I completely agree. Well, here's the problem. NRG noticed that as well, and so in response, they're not just sitting there dealing with, okay, anytime we make a play, we got to be aware of the Fear No Evil. They're specifically forcing out the monkey ult.
It just seems that because they're forcing out Twig's ultimate so often, and as well as PrettyPriMe trying to get his ultimate off, there's no synergy and cohesion in the team fights coming out of Obey. NRG show a little bit of pressure, and it seems that Obey are just collapsing upon themselves.
And that's the game plan. NRG specifically looking to burn those ultimates so that when it's time to fight, there's absolutely nothing available. You notice NRG didn't go. A lot of teams will bait the Gold Fury and try to fight there. NRG didn't even go for the ruse. They went into Obey's jungle, knocked on the door, and kicked CaptainTwig in the teeth, and then they took out the objective. They're not playing around here. They're not looking for the okie dokes. They're going right to the objective that they want.
And because like when you're behind, normally you want to be building defensively. And like we mentioned before, we still don't see any wing blades being really built here by Obey. Maybe Variety's starting that after the Genji's guard, but now Ataraxia being whooped, gonna be able to knock back emilitoo, saving his life and slow, but now emilitoo might have gotten overextended. PrettyPriMe could use the ultimate.
Oh, and the Chiron ult comes through in the clutch. Long range out of everybody. Sanctuary into the ult, saves emilitoo for the moment. He's got literally 1 HP. CaptainTwig not going to be able to catch up over there on the left-hand side, but this might open up the tier 1 tower. for Obey.
I thought that Twig was going to go into the board camp to be able to blink over the wall, but instead he was kind of looking for the safer play. And that's something that Twig probably needs to change his style a little bit. He can't be making these safe plays, but now he's going to be able to force out the purification from adapting, but he's fighting a 5-level Nemesis that's higher than him.
And there's a whole bunch of Obey players here. That's certainly going to change things up. Dimi, level 19, has showed up as well. So 2 level 19s ready to go ahead and play defense. And Adapting has been incredibly efficient in the jungle. He has more farm than his solo laner in gold and experience. Pushing PANDALIKE around is going to be Dimi.
Doing a lot of damage to emilitoo, gonna force out the jump, and now Nemesis ultimate, being able to chase CaptainTwig, the meditation being popped off variety with his Guan Yu conviction. But on the flip side, NRG have some sustain on their own with the monolith from iRaffer, but instead of going back to the laning phase, they're gonna take this advantage by maybe sneaking the red buff.
I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll see NRG go for that. I'm not sure if Obey are going to respond to it, was my statement, and they certainly are not. Obey now trying to follow, or at least, Obey no, PANDALIKE trying to follow the enemy, which has been PANDALIKE's problem in the past. By himself, trying to fight as a one-man army, and he's kind of isolated himself, put him in a bad spot, but the rest of Obey is forced to really follow up. That might be a good play if everybody groups up together, and it looks like Obey going to siege on the tier 1 tower, likely to fall, but emilitoo gets a whoop.
This is the timing for them to make a play right now. They're grouped up. They have the Guan Yu sustain that's just ever so powerful. It's going to be more efficient at this point than iRaffer on the Terra, despite having the ultimate though, so the mobility is going to be pretty impactful. We see the bat coming out of Dimi, but he does have the teleport and adapting, just waiting on the side. iRaffer going to start things up with a nice little route, even forcing out his own ultimate, but PANDALIKE's doing a good job zoning.
There's the slice and dice. PANDALIKE going to force into the dragon form. CaptainTwig already chased out 25%, and the Fear No Evil on cooldown. Adapting trying to choose out who to chase. It's going to be the support player. A lot of damage coming out of Adapting, and emilitoo cleans him up. That's 5 in a row for the Hunter.
5-on-4 play, no NRG. They're not done yet. They're going to whoop out Ataraxia. A lot of damage, even forcing the Sanctuary, but getting juggled back in the air. After the retreat, they're going to be able to sustain up a little bit and look for more objectives.
Yeah, it looks like Adapting going to head back to base. Half HP already, and that's going to be the rest of NRG heading back to base. Unfortunately, no real sustain on their side. No Guan Yu. Ra, obviously banned by
that
the
wall.
guys themselves.
Oh, man, that wall. I thought Dimi was about to fearless him under tower, but yeah. Without emilitoo at this point, you can't really kill a tanky target such as Guan Yu at the level 17 point, especially with Genji's guard. I really like that pickup here because it's going to be able to really deal with Freya's late game damage and also have the MP5 that you really need to constantly get the heals off.
Adapting, looking for blood right now. 4 levels higher than his direct opposition, and he just gobbles CaptainTwig up. 2 basics and an ultimate. CaptainTwig, sit down.
CaptainTwig didn't respect the movement speed debuff coming out of that ultimate. Should have used the purification. They're getting closer to variety because not only would variety have stunned him there, but he would have got the heal off and buying him some time. And now NRG not even going to wait. Going to start the Fire Giant 5-on-4.
Exactly like I said, they're not looking for a ruse. NRG know what they want and they're ready to just go ahead and take it. NRG going to flop over the top. Let's listen to them thanks to Seal Series as they fight Obey.
Spawn there.
Level 2.
Raijin on the side.
Raijin's right side. Raijin's right side, careful. Yeah, Raijin! Yeah. Let's Raijin go together. Back. Hamba's up now, Hamba's alive now.
Yeah.
Just heal up. We should definitely group and try to do something. I'm trying to figure out what we can do. What's our strength?
So Tully, you saw the guys from NRG group up there on the Terra monolith. How does that heal compare to some of the other sustained characters?
Well, the fact that they have to all sit around the monolith means that Obey has an opportunity to take advantage of that grouping up, whereas Obey only has to group up for a short amount of time, get the Guan Yu heal, and then scatter away. So that's the difference. But now that CaptainTwig has respawned because that he is such a low level, NRG couldn't really take advantage of that play. They tried to pick off a variety there, but a great job disengaging. Now finishing off the wing blade, so it's going to be even more difficult to lock down that Guan Yu.
iRaffer just taking a look towards Obey. He's got the Magi's Blessing online, so should any of the CC come through, he should be fine. But that's one of the problems for Obey's composition. There's just not a lot of CC. Variety's got it on the ult. CaptainTwig's got the Fear No Evil, but outside of that, totally, I mean, you know, PANDALIKE's got a hammer, and what else? That's it.
That's pretty much it. But like, we mentioned before, the CC coming out of NRG is just almost infinite, whereas on the side of Obey, they got that Guan Yu ultimate, they have the Hunmat's ultimate, they also have the taunts and the fears coming out of PrettyPrime's ultimate, but I'm not really liking it if they're not grouped up. If they keep getting isolated the way they are, NRG should be able to run away with this one. They're still 11-1 with a 6,000 goal lead, and surprisingly enough, at the 25-minute mark, there's only been one Gold Fury so far between these two teams.
Well, I mean, you say surprisingly enough, but look at the compositions, totally. I mean, it's up to NRG to stop Obey from doing Gold Furies of their own, and up until this point, early game, there's a lot of stress and a lot of threat on that Gold Fury. Here, NRG are able to get to the Gold Fury and do enough damage before Obey even show up, so it's not that big of a concern, pushing NRG even further in the lead now, about 8,000 gold.
To having the ward vision control that they needed to around Fire Giant gave them the opportunity to get the second Gold Fury. NRG just doing a good job objectively, whether it's grouping up for these towers, stealing some buff invades, or sneaking the Gold Fury. And this is something that they need to do because Obey are just, they're not going to be that easy to take out. You have to take these advantages whenever you can get them.
And again, NRG, they're going and pressing up into the blue buff. Are NRG that concerned about a cooldown reduction mana buff at this point in the game? Absolutely not. They're trying to goad Obey into coming closer and starting the fight. There's the Blink Fearless out of Dimi, and that's going to start everything off, forcing the ultimate out of CaptainTwig. Yammyn forces CaptainTwig into the graveyard. Panda can't going to turn around, that's PANDALIKE and he gets flipped on and dipped on. Yammyn with the double kill, 2 for the mid lane. There's the assistance, double Fearless out of Dimi. Variety gets caught as well, and Adapting gets a kill for himself. 3 down on the side of Obey. Everybody on NRG healthy as a horse.
Sometimes you just gotta let things go. Twig does not let his speed buff go yet again, and that's the result. Now he's on the losing side of the team fight. Twig needs to pick his spots a little bit better. If he funneled the rest of NRG through that corridor around those back right harpies, that was Obey's opportunity to team fight.
You know, I said healthy as a horse, and that was just something that came off of the top, no pun intended, talking about, or at least looking at Ataraxia. And here's the problem. Raxia was relatively healthy in that team fight because he's not having an impact. Every once in a while, you're seeing these Chiron ultimates come out, and that's all well and good, but it's too few and far between. I'm not seeing enough damage out of Chiron or any sort of impact, especially compared to the way that other players at NRG have been able to do it. Adapting just casually makes mincemeat out of PrettyPriMe.
882 damage crit coming out of Adapting. His build is just off the charts right now, sitting at 14,000 gold, 3,000 ahead of Twig. And with this Fire Giant from NRG, this is probably going to spell curtains for Obey.
Adapting is going to come around the corner, gets knocked up, but he's got the double dash. A little bit of a slow coming out from Raxia, but Adapting just here. One hit, 2 hit, 3 hit, and 4 hits. Ataraxia falls down.
Can't get away from Adapting with that stone cutting sword. Variety now going to get juggled with emilitoo's damage, having a little bit of sustain, so he'll be okay for now, as well as emilitoo getting heals from that monolith. And now with Adapting pushing down the mid, they have about 5 seconds before PrettyPriMe comes up, but 35 seconds until Ataraxia does.
I love the way Adapting has built this character. So more often than not, the Nemesis winds up being a rather support-esque jungler. Sometimes turns into a frontline character, right? You'll see the hi-rez, back then it used to be Jotuns, but you'd see the cooldown reduction item come out first, a breastplate, then pretty much tank from there. Shouts to Mirage or the Dirty Bubble, right? You see very similar stuff. But Nemesis is one of these characters that can get off to a tear. We saw 2-0-6 at one point. Quickly that turned into 3-4, and all of a sudden, this Nemesis doesn't have to be tanky. Now you can be full offensive. Look at that build. He's even got crit in there, totally. This is Adapting, recognizing the pace of the game, realizing where he's gone, and grabbing it and running with it, and turning himself into a hard carry.
And this is what makes Adapting so scary, because not only is his build scary, but his playstyle, because he can play very aggressive when he wants to, but this game, he was more playing off of Obey's aggression. During the speed buff invades, he would take advantage of their overextension, always looking for those picks, and then making a play happen from his own style. Something we're not normally used to seeing. Adapting is usually the one that makes the first play.
Well, 2 things I think really helped facilitate that playstyle. One, it's Adapting's on the Nemesis. He wants to farm up anyway, so that early game isn't really going to feature him popping into lanes and doing all this, that, and a third. And the second thing across the way, CaptainTwig, he was level he was 4 levels beneath adapting, so that allowed whenever CaptainTwig came into the middle, he's able to make the turnaround. Adapting gets feared a little bit from the totem, but that's not going to be too big of a deal. Ultimate's out of the Chiron, and PrettyPriMe will chase out one player, Dimi all the way on the backside, and Obey successfully defend a tier 2.
Dimi very low, but he has teleport available. Yammyn forcing out the Sanctuary. He thought that he was about to get absolutely obliterated by Twig, but adapting still on the side, waiting for that right opportunity. PANDALIKE jumping in. iRaffer gonna find the stun and the root. Adapting's here with the ultimate. PANDALIKE has nowhere to go.
Absolutely gone. Adapting, fantastic play from him. 7-0 and 8 from the supposed slipping jungler, trying to bring back his name. Nice lift coming out of the Freya. Here's the follow-up damage. Adapting combines with emilitoo to chase out CaptainTwig. Adapting everybody on the tower, crumbles, and tier 2 falls down to the wayside. 1,500 more gold goes to NRG. They're in the lead by 12K plus, and they're pushing on the Phoenix.
They're going to be able to stun out Variety. The wall almost stopping, but emilitoo chases him down with the Fatalis, and now finding a nice little double whoop in the back, but Dimi can't really get there without his blink or ultimate, so he's going to just be able to heal on up with that defensive power cleave and the monolith. Mid Phoenix does go down, but before NRG starts going on the left, they need to get these tier 2 towers.
Players from Obey, we tried to defend there, but they just didn't have the tools, and I think that's going to be the issue for Obey when it comes to these defensive sets. Like we mentioned earlier, lack of crowd control for sure is going to plague Obey into the late game, but with CaptainTwig's ultimate on cooldown and PrettyPriMe using his ultimate, there's no other tool that Obey has to really defend a Phoenix.
No, not at all. And NRG's comp is also kind of a bait comp, right? Because Nemesis has the shield to get back health. Terra has the monolith and her ultimate, giving mobility as well as the heal. Dimi's just going to be naturally tanky. He can blink in the backline, create a disruption, absorb a lot of cooldowns, Lawbringer defensively away, and then come back into that team fight with the teleport.
You can see right there, highlighting over the Deathbringer, adapting, just going even further with his just offensive build right here. And again, it's very important to highlight that adapting doesn't come into this game saying, hey guys, I'm gonna build crit and go ham. This is adapting saying, all right, we build boots first, and then we build hydrants, and then wherever the game dictates I go is where adapting goes. The team and this player are allowed to shift, and it's a beautiful thing.
And this is something that NRG have been doing so well in the first game of their sets, especially against Cringe Crew. They've been able to really dominate it. Against Cringe Crew the first game, they didn't drop a single death. This time against Obey, they now have an 18-1 lead. 15,000 gold. They got the mid Phoenix earlier on, and this is what they're waiting for, to get those fire minions flooding down middle. Somebody from Obey has to react, and this is going to allow NRG to really basically force this fire giant for free.
Like they have been the entire game. Obey is losing one thing here, another thing there, and then NRG go ahead and force whatever they want. PANDALIKE getting pushed around, again forced into his ultimate. There's a nice bomb coming out of the Agni, and Obey right now, they're going to be on the aggressive. There's the sprint. Steel Series. Let's listen to Obey.
She's dying. In the back. Okay.
Oh shit, I need hey, Freya rig is down, Agni.
Fail. I have stun in 2 seconds.
Low,
Freya's low. I got nothing. Stun in 2 seconds.
Agni and Freya low.
Agni Freya low.
Oh fuck, my dash was cancelled. That's maybe now.
Fuck man. We went too far back.
Adapting on the side, I might be in trouble.
Yeah. You guys gotta go safe way,
I'm running.
We had to engage sooner, like whenever my dash was on.
Totally. Break down the breakdown. Obey had the perfect come around, right? NRG go ahead, they engage, they use all their engagement tools, and Obey noticed that, so they pop the sprint, they go directly for it, but something turns it around.
You can't funnel through that little corridor between the tier 1 and tier 2 in the solo lane, just instantly taking advantage that Yammyn's bomb were just on point. You don't want to do that against an Agni at the late game. The damage coming out of emilitoo right now and Yammyn, they're the top 2 player damage of the game. NRG are just riding off that late game magical damage, with adapting being able to do work in the earlier stages.
And again, a lot of that damage coming out of Yammyn was enabled by adapting's ultimate. That's what we were talking about early on, and then like we've been talking about, adapting able to transition into an offensive force of his own. And right now, NRG certainly looking good at the moment. Yammyn waiting for his own red buff. Will he get it? I think so.
I think it's finally time that we see Yammyn with his own red buff, but now It's NRG grouping up with the Fire Giant. They got the mid Phoenix earlier on. It's about to respawn, but there's going to be at least one wave down middle. There's going to be a second one spawning soon that Obey have to deal with, and NRG, they're going to push down the left tier 2 tower.
And this is go uncontested. Really no reason for Obey to show their face here. 1,500 again in the pockets of NRG. They've clean swept all of the towers on the board, whereas NRG still have 3 themselves remaining, not to mention the Phoenixes. Mid Phoenix for Obey has very little HP available. NRG gonna look towards the play.
They're going to try to get this Phoenix that just respawned. It's going to be very easy and quick. A nice little double whoop on the left into the stun from Terra. Dimi diving the back, but the Fear No Evil separates the team fight.
Beautiful accuracy coming out of the solo lane, flipping on the backside and getting the double Fearless. That's going to be enough room provided to NRG to take out the mid of Phoenix. Now NRG shifting over to the left-hand side. Dimi trying to find a target, can't even choose. CaptainTwig low, PANDALIKE going for the play, as well as Variety. Gets the stun onto iRaffer, but that's the support. He's exactly where he wants to be. The Titan is getting attacked by the fire minions. To the skies goes the Freya, and to the ground goes the Fafnir.
And now NRG, they're still grouping up for this left side Phoenix. The Agni bomb stun almost taking out Ataraxia, even getting whooped out, but overextended PrettyPriMe makes emilitoo get hurt.
Still, 1 traded for 1 death and 2 Phoenixes. NRG are pretty okay with that. 917. We're not calling New York City, we're calling emilitoo. What a fantastic play so far. This game bringing real life to the Queen of the Valkyries.
But like, we have to think, how can Obey really continue to hold? Because they're down 19,000 gold, despite finding that 1 kill, despite forcing the Lawbringer out of Dimi. They are still really far behind. They're not at the same itemization quite yet. Only about 5 items for some of these guys. Not even finished it for PANDALIKE yet.
Totally, I'm gonna break one of my own rules. I never like to call a game before the fat lady sings. This one's over. Obey right now have to focus on game number 2. This is, I think Aggro put it best. This is an extended timeout for Obey here. They're down 20k gold. They're really, I mean, in order for Obey to come back, basically they've got to wipe the team 3 times, get Fire Giant twice, pray to the gods, have a couple of constellations align, and then somehow win the lotto. Obey right now, they have to identify what went wrong. And if you ask this guy, crowd control not available for Obey. And also CaptainTwig has to look at his early game aggression. It's a good thing, but too much of a good thing, and you wind up with an issue.
I think he should have put his pressure on the dual lane instead. You just can't let this Freya go off at this point in time. The player damage between Yammyn and emilitoo, like we mentioned, are just through the roof right now. It's carrying NRG in this late game, and this is what's giving them such control in these teamfights, because we see the whoops, we see the Terra stuns, the Agni bomb stuns, and then emilitoo just follows up with a Pulsar Radiate, and you can't really get away from him.
For me, it's not that CaptainTwig was focusing the wrong target, it's that he just had too many targets. Sometimes you don't need to pull the trigger, but just build up the ammo. And the problem was CaptainTwig was level 14 when adapting was 19, building into crit as a Nemesis. That just can't happen. That differential is too much, and that's why NRG are ahead by leaps and bounds, pushing up here on the right-hand side for the final swell of our game number 1.
The last Phoenix remaining for Obey. There is a fire mini wave on the left-hand side that Ataraxia has to attend to, and this is the trigger that NRG is about to pull as a result. Still grouping up around the monolith, waiting for another wave, but Dimi, he's gonna just tank some of these Phoenix shots. Now emilitoo gonna go in, gonna force the purification.
Dimi flips to the backside, grabs PrettyPriMe, who's gonna force out the purification. Trouble on the front side as NRG focusing off the Phoenix, half HP for the objective. PrettyPriMe in the ultimate, psych, he's down, and that's adapting, getting another one for the kill column. 808, and heartbreaks for Obey across the way. 3 Phoenixes are down. NRG's up 22-2, and this abysmal deficit for Obey. The writing's on the wall. NRG need one more
Titan.
push.
The Titan is going down to the fire minutes, just 1% health. NRG, they were about to go get the Fire Giant before ending the game, but now with the Titan being that low, they could just go all in here.
And that's exactly what they're gonna do. 1 lift and
Deleted.
1 buried CaptainTwig. PANDALIKE on the backside trying to distract, but emilitoo, Dimi, and adapting don't need no distractions. To the skies and to the victory table go the players of NRG. 22 plus, what is that, 23? Oof. I do not want to be Obey.
Now, granted, the game was over, long over before that point in time, but you cannot forego dealing with those fire minions at your Titan. That is a huge blunder coming out of Obey, just in general, even despite it being that far stretched from NRG.
Like I said, I mean, the Obey guys, I'm sure they're not too concerned about that one being over. So maybe the fire minions were a little bit of a tactical play on their part, but at the end of the day, I think what it comes down to is Obey. Like I said, they had a couple of problems in their draft. Despite a couple of the analysts, even myself included, kind of liked the draft at first glance. I think we really saw some of the problems as the game continued on. We're going to toss it back to the desk and see how they break down game number 1 here.
Thanks so much, F-Dot. Very good game 1 there coming out for NRG. Before we go into the breakdown of that one, just to remind you, this weekend we do have the Reaping number 2 going on right now. It's only for this weekend, so make sure you get to it and actually get some discounts on some of those skins that are available right now. It's 50% off selected skins between yesterday to tomorrow.
It's a great deal, 50% off select skins, and there's a lot of really good ones on there. The Amaterasu space skin is on there that I saw. Some really awesome ones overall. All like the costume-themed skins. Really cool.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of this game and actually take it right from the top. Beginning of the game looked pretty good for Obey. CaptainTwig made a bit of an influence there. Hazer looking to burn beads and try and find some picks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they gave up the first blood and then lost their speed buff to that invade from the Hog. But then we saw Twig rotate over to that solo lane. And this mechanical play from him, you show why people are scared of his Batz, why they're banning it away, putting the monkey on Dimi, as he tries to tear out and following him through and picking up that kill.
And even Variety himself didn't recognize that, going in as well just to make sure that Dimi doesn't have any chance of escaping there. It got off to a good start for Obey.
Without a doubt. I mean, we heard that, F-Dot and Totally talking a little bit about the early aggression coming out from Twig and how it was really good in spots. We saw that kill over in the solo lane. We saw him get some speed, steal away a speed buff, make another play with the monkey bounce that was really fun to watch. But then NRG recognized that, forced the ultimate over and over and over again, and then pick fights whenever that Hunbat's ultimate is down, and that's where Obey started to fall very far behind.
And you talk about the Obey, that ultimate being down for Hunbat's there. Well, the casters were talking about crowd control here, Hazer, and when you look to the whole NRG lineup, they crowd controlled so well together because all their gods actually had some peel.
Yeah, you saw a lot. Whenever Obey decided that they had a good fight and they tried to chase NRG down places, almost every single time they chased people, they got caught in these narrow corridors, they got CC'd out, and then they lost sort of 3 people for 0 in most of these chases. So that was a real downfall for them. They couldn't handle the CC chains, and they couldn't get the kills they needed to get.
And those CC chains kind of started over in the dual lane early on there. I mean, emilitoo got to a tear in this game as it continued there. Obviously, the pressure with Terra as well. We were talking about the interactions with the dash against the Rue aggro. Talk us through it just for the fans at home who may not realize it.
Okay, so if you get, say you're playing Chiron like Ataraxia was there, and then you get rooted by Terra, you can then start to dash and you'll be fine. But if you then cancel your dash, you're still rooted. It doesn't cleanse the root per se, though he can use his own one to cleanse the root like Hazer was talking about during the draft. That cleanse is a very underrated part of Chiron's kit overall, but it didn't end up mattering because it was Terra and iRaffer rotating around the map, making things happen, and it was even emilitoo making rotations. We saw him over in this on the solo side of the map trying to confirm a kill over there just to get his team ahead. Then he starts to get ahead in the duo lane, and Emil made a huge impact in this game.
We mentioned the crowd control from him a little bit there, but it's also the range of their crowd control was all on a very similar level as well, Hazer. Obviously the banish, the walls coming out from Terra as well, and then you've got the Agni bombs on top.
Yeah, the synergy that they have between the NRG players allows them to, chain these CCs almost perfectly. I mean, you barely even notice the diminishing returns. You see players getting completely stun locked, taken down, as you see Emil picking up that kill and Ataraxia on the dual lane.
But then he just went off from there, wasn't he? He just continued.
It was incredible. He actually lost a lot of farm rotating around the map early game.
Yeah.
I think he was 2-0 and Ataraxia was 0-2, and yet they were about even farm. But eventually, you saw the fact that he got his team ahead allowed him to, do whatever he wanted in these fights, just free cast, forcing actives, getting kills, and I don't think he fell down a single time in the game, did he?
No, not really. Well, actually fell down once because we did see the burst damage of the Polynomicon coming through as well. But actually, talking a little bit more about this whole team in a nutshell, we saw NRG get a lead there, aggro, but then they would fall back quite a few times, and it would basically just be an overall bait to trap Obey for some more kills.
Exactly, and that was one of the problems that Obey had with their draft, is that with the Guan Yu, you don't have that backline diver sort of potential like a character, say, Bologna has. We saw that there was a time where Obey, chases deep, and then all of a sudden they have to retreat the entire way down their middle lane, and they're just getting CC'd from a distance, like you mentioned. You could see it there. The healing, both teams had some healing, but they were very similar overall. So if they're willing to trade out, normally when you've got Guan Yu, you're willing to trade that poke because you assume that your healing is going to be stronger. But NRG had the Terra, and their healing, as you can see by the numbers, was just as strong.
If you look at the stats here, this is absolutely insane. What was that, 22 kills to 3?
Yeah.
With a difference of 8k in player damage. Very little difference in player damage there, but you can tell the NRG selected their targets properly. When they damaged someone, they were killing them. They weren't putting out damage for the sake of putting out damage. And even the healing, I expected to see Terra up there with higher healing than the Guan, but the Guan actually bringing out 2k more.
It was surprising, and you mentioned it there, the target selection from Obey wasn't great overall. PrettyPriMe played very far back for the majority of that game. Only had 1 death whenever adapting crit him for like 800, just doing adapting Nemesis.
Was he playing that far back because of the fact the range CC was so long, so he had to sit further back?
Yeah, you have to in some degrees, but he's not playing Vulcan. It's not 1 big shot that you have to hit from a distance. It's 4 big shots, and you really need to be hitting at least 3 if you're going to be making an impact with those taiko drums. And we saw those ultimates were just not effective overall for PrettyPriMe. And that's where I think that Obey was really lacking. The CC would have been great coming out of that taiko drum ultimate, but if he's only hitting 1 on 1 target, it's not very impactful. Whereas we saw Yammyn hit multiple people with the bomb stun, multiple people whooped up by Freya into the bomb stun from Yammyn. Yammyn's damage was nuts that game. We just saw the different, like Yammyn was able to play a little bit more forward because of the backline dive composition with Tier, whereas Obey and PrettyPriMe had to play a little bit more back because of the Guan Yu.